I'm not going to say the voices and visions of our senior citizens. What I'm going to say is the voices and visions of our citizens with great wisdom and experience. And that's what I prefer to see it as. And that's what it is. Anyway, before we begin, there are just a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, that this year we're dedicating our reading to Sybil Kohler, who was just there's a little inscription on her in the back of your program, which I'll read. We dedicate this reading to Sybil Kohler, our friend, our classmate, a wonderful poet whose words, whose presence inspired us all and always made us see the world in ways we could never imagine. And it's just absolutely true. Sybil was all of those. She was our classmate. I could never call her a student, although she insisted on being one, but she was a professional poet. She published several books of poetry, and she just wanted to always be there and learn and keep learning and keep writing, and she really was an inspiration to us. So we dedicate today to her memory. She passed away just this in December, and a couple of our readers today have written poems about her, and they'll indicate that to you when they come up here. I also want to thank, before we start, Linda Werbel. Linda, where are you? There she is. And Linda is our Vice President for Government and Community Relations here at St. Francis. And if not for Linda Werbel, this event would never have taken place, would not exist. And we really thank her so much for that. She's really a great friend of ours and continued support for us. Now, this year we entitle our program "A Rainbow Bridge of Light." If you notice, rainbow is the word rainbow is kind of, well, anyway. So, Voices from the Universe, a reading of poetry and prose. And I took this from a poem written by our first reader today, Ellen Prescott, and that too, an excerpt from that poem is in your program. It's on the inside first page. I'm going to read that to you, and I think this kind of sums up who we are and what we represent, and how our class, which meets on Sunday mornings, Sunday afternoons, we've been doing this now for, I would say, at least 10 years. Some of the same people who began with me are still here, and we get new people all the time, and it's just an amazing, it's really an amazing microcosm, really, of a writing community in that classroom. And I have discovered over the years, some of the best writers, not just in Brooklyn Heights or in New York City or the United States, but some of the best voices and writers in the universe. And that's why I always wanted to use that word, universe. They're just such great writers. And there's no one, and everyone in the class is so supportive of each other and just so passionate about what they do. And just, and all it really is what unites us is just our love of writing. It's not wanting fame or fortune or recognition, but just the love of writing and communicating through words. And everybody is so encouraging. To those who are a little bit more experienced, they're so encouraging to those who have less experience or who are really trying to write for the first time in their lives. And many of our students, many of our writers, have been doing other things, obviously, in their lives and have never really gotten the chance to do much writing. I mean, many are school teachers or have had other jobs where they've just never been able to have that time. And once it all came out, it's just, it's really, for me, it's always been the most inspiring thing I can ever relate to you. And after that, it's such a pleasure to go out on a Sunday morning to be with these citizens these great writers who really inspire me so much that when I leave that class, all I want to do is go home and write. I mean, it's just, it just puts me in a great mood, and they're wonderful. They're really nurturing, and so it's kind of a writing utopia. I mean, I think that's what I would call it. So just to read Ellen's, before we begin, just to read an excerpt of Ellen's poem. Ellen also, by the way, designed, these are her signets in love. Are they signets? Is that the correct word? Baby swans. Babies in love? Baby swans? They're grown-ups, so okay. Yeah, so that's her picture there, okay? Give her images, autumn's flames. The longest distance between 2 points is a rainbow bridge of color, a rainbow bridge of light, when all will come together in hand and dance in the circle of life. Our universe ties us together. We are one, as the moon, as the sun, as a raindrop, as a snowflake, as a grain of sand, as a leaf, as a flower. We are one. And like I said, I think that sums up what we are pretty well. Okay. Anyway, so I think we might begin. So what we do is we're going to have the reader come up here. I will introduce our first reader, and then then each person will introduce themselves as they come up, and the reading pretty much speaks for itself, you know, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. Well, coincidentally enough, our first reader today is Ellen Prescott, and she's can't say enough for Ellen. About Ellen. Ellen always leads off. You know, I see her as my leadoff batter. If I use baseball, you know, analogy, she just always gets that class jump started with her humor and her really, she's a really great lyrical poet as well as a monologist, and really writes wonderful you know, pieces, monologues, and about human situations, which are always, you know, comical, because the human condition can be very comical as well as tragic. It has kind of both sides to it. So anyway, without further ado, as they say, Ellen Prescott.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Levenberg has designated me as his lead-off reader. Of course, that doesn't cancel my nervousness, but as a fellow writer, Rose Fontanella and I were chatting yesterday. I ended our conversation with "break a leg," and she responded, "At this age, maybe break a hip would be more suitable." So Rose coined a new phrase, and everything is relative, so goodbye nervousness. In the capacity of lead-off reader, I will be presenting a poem I wrote in memory of a friend and fellow writer who I met in Mitch's workshop, Sybil Kohler. She died December 28, 2012. Then I will present a monologue which was prompted by Professor Mitch Levenberg several years ago, and neither he nor I remembered how it went, but it inspired me to write, as all of his prompts do, in this case, a monologue which I call, "It Must Have Been the Coffee." For this, picture a Brooklyn widowed housewife in her 50s with grown children on their own, who prepared a very special brew of coffee. The scene can take place in the past, the present, and possibly the future in her large tree-lined house on a street in Brooklyn. I hope you like it. Elegy for Sybil Kohler, thinking about Sybil. I am angry with you. When we met on Montague Street, that last day for us meeting accidentally, I did not know. You said I would write something good for Mitch's workshop. You will. You always do. But you couldn't make it this time, you said, as you smiled. I am angry with you because you knew something more than me that made you larger than life. But you were silent about it, as you usually were reticent about most things, living, I believe, as we writers do, between the lines. And on that last day, it must have been easiest for you, your silence. You were already a ghost. Yes, you smiled your words so I couldn't hear them. and you left with your unborn sentences, and you walked away with my words too. And your light will be missed but not forgotten, for it illuminates the page and lives in the memory by those among us you've touched. So, dear Sybil, you have to be forgiven for leaving us, your new journey having begun. But rest on, and yes, when you choose to, write on. It must have been the coffee. Libby looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. True, she was a little rounder, but she still was voluptuous and firm for her age, 55, and she liked her Marty telling her she looked like an Italian movie star, even though she started dyeing her hair a bright red. Brushing her hair back, she was reminded of how Marty called her his little red ball of fire. She removed her makeup, which was somewhat heavier than it needed to be, but Marty had liked her that way too. She walked to her kitchen, turned the flame off from under her coffee pot. It sure smelled good. She poured some of the brew slowly and mindlessly, watched it dripping into the mug, because she was involved with the events of the day. She smiled, picking up the mug, and thinking about the Brazilian movie star Carmen Miranda, whom she saw in a 1940s movie musical on cable, began to samba toward the phone in her bedroom, singing, "I take out, day, I take out, da, I take out, of the clock." She had to call her best friend Ethel. Dialing, she continued singing, "I take out, tea. Hello, Ethel? It's me. Have you got the coffee on? Good. Pour yourself a cup. I need to talk about what happened today." "What? You have to get a cigarette? I'll wait." "I take out, tea." "Yeah, cigarettes and coffee go together, but you should stop smoking anyway like I did. I know I gained weight, but you should try. You know it's not good for you. It's just coffee for me now, and I know it affects my nerves, even the decaffeinated, but I gotta have it. And wait until you hear about this. Remember how I was telling you how I wanted to replace my window blinds, especially the ones in the living room? So I called Glickstein's, Brooklyn's finest accessories for the windows, decorators, after going over there to see their showroom of stuff, and they said they could send someone over to take the measurements of all the windows. I made a choice for just the living room, and the following morning, a guy named Arnie from Glickstein's calls me up and says he can come in an hour with samples for the bedroom windows too. So I say, good, get showered, sprayed myself with Marty's favorite perfume. You know the one. I wore it for special occasions. It's called Combustion. He used to say it was a turn-on, and the fragrance reminds me of Marty, so I wear it more often now. He used to nibble at my ears all the time when he smelled it on me. Then I threw my prettiest house dress on, I should look nice, and even put on my gold bracelets, gold necklace, matching earrings and rings with rhinestones, and my gold sandals. Then I put the coffee on. You listening? Okay, Ethel, stop coughing. Yeah, take a sip. The coffee is smelling good all over the house, and my doorbell rings. I open the door, and there stands Arnie Arnez. No, not Desi Arnez. That was Lucy's husband. Geez, Ethel, are you kidding? What is it with you? Then get your hearing checked. Static? Then call the phone guy or something. Well, anyway, I took one look at Arnie Arnez, and right away I couldn't catch my breath. Gorgeous! He looked like a gypsy violin player. thick black wavy hair and deep-set black eyes and a light coffee-colored golden skin, no less. Yeah, he's from Brazil. I don't know how old he was. Young. What are you asking? Let me talk. So in he walks, and I suggest he hangs his jacket up, and he does, and he remarks about how good the coffee smelled, adding that his wife couldn't make a good cup of coffee to save her life. So I offered him a cup of coffee, and naturally, what's coffee without my banana cake with the nuts and raisins and the icing on top? My Marty loved my banana cake. He should rest in peace. Well, Arnie says he'd like some coffee after he takes the measurements and shows me samples. And he seemed to be in a hurry at first and goes right away to the windows to measure. And I'm looking at the back of him, which is as good as the front of him, while he's measuring. What a body! So nice, slim, and strong-looking arms and hands that could have a tender touch. After he ran around and measured all the windows in the bedrooms, too, he said he could go for some coffee sitting down at the table, and I pour, and I'm standing near him as he starts telling me how in his country, coffee bean pickers make lousy money, and they've fought to unionize. Some of them got killed trying. And even though he wasn't a bean picker in his country, since he came from an educated family, he was glad to be in America and was going to complete his studies to become a lawyer and maybe then go back to help the bean pickers. He sounds like a pinko communist. Why does he have to be a pinko communist? What are you talking about? He's a nice guy. Can't he just be a good guy? Yeah, he's an intellectual. Yeah, socially conscious. Socially conscious? I'll agree with that. He certainly is. So he's looking at me with those eyes. I keep thinking about those deep-set, black, soulful eyes. Those piercing eyes. What did I do? Oh, my God, I'm getting a hot flash. You'd think I'd be rid of these by now. Wait a minute, Ethel. I have to open the window wider. That's better. You're sipping? I'll sip too. The samples? Forget about the samples. Where was I? Let me think. Oh, yeah. What did I do? Nothing. But as he's looking at me, meanwhile, it's my heart, not the coffee, that's perking up and down, up and down. And I'm melting through and falling apart. Ethel, I haven't felt like that in years, not since my Marty. Then he tells me that my coffee is great, and he loved the banana cake, and how I could make even better coffee since it's an art, and people in his country drink a lot of coffee, more than we do. I don't know. Marty always said I made a great cup of coffee. You add eggshells with a pinch of salt and a pinch of cinnamon and a pinch of vanilla extract and a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And before you know it, I'm a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And then he kisses my hands and tells me I'm earthy and that I smell good and taste good and round like a cup of coffee. And before I knew it, we were on my living room Oriental doing it. Hello, Ethel? Yeah, that's what I said. Do you have to make that screechy sound? Oh, it hurts my ears. I keep telling you that every time you do that. Yeah, and next week, he's coming back to finish the job with the samples for the bedroom and make the installation of the blinds. Ethel, of the blinds. You're laughing, Ethel? Oh, you're coughing. So we get dressed, have another cup of coffee. He takes a sip, holds the coffee in his mouth after swallowing. He tells me that a good cup of coffee should be savored like good vintage wine and held like a beautiful woman. Before he leaves, He fondles my breasts, winks with those piercing black eyes, and whispers, "Never underestimate the power of a good cup of coffee." So, what? Yeah, it must have been the coffee. It must have been the coffee after all.
That was great. That's how I think about coffee. So that's. I just wanted to say that as I came off the stage, I noticed that Councilman Steve Levin has shown up, and he graces us with his presence every year. He's councilman from the 33rd District, which includes Brooklyn Heights and Williamsburg. And he's just been wonderful. He is truly, truly our friend, and his continued support is also why we're still doing this. So, again, thank you, Councilman.
Well, thank you, Professor, and thank you, Ellen. That was really wonderful. And I'm really glad to be back here this year, and I don't want to talk too long because we've got a lot of wonderful poetry and prose to hear. But I was thinking a little bit about what makes this program so valuable, and what makes the people in this room and the people that come through this program such great artists. And what and so I just want to share with you. I went to a film yesterday. I saw a film in the city, and it was this Russian movie from the ~60s. Called Andrei Rublev, that was made by a director called Andrei Tarkovsky. He's the great late Soviet director, and it was a wonderful film. It was 3.5 hours long. It was beautiful, beautiful film. I mean, really, really special. And so when I went home, I watched some interviews I went on YouTube and watched some interviews with him, and he was talking about. He's a very philosophical guy, and he was talking about art and life, and what he said that struck me was, you know, art is experience, and that it's hard. The big challenge is transferring the experience to others, and that's something that you don't normally do in day-to-day life. You experience things, and that's what informs you, and that's, I think, one of the things that strikes me about this program. There's real experience in what you do, in the lives that you lead, and in the experiences that you've had that really make for great art. The experiences in this room are extraordinary and run the gamut, and it's amazingly diverse. It's as diverse as our borough and as our city, and what Professor Levenberg has been able to do, I think, through this program is draw that out, draw all of those experiences out, that, you know, because you all have not necessarily been professional writers or professional artists in your careers, but those experiences are so rich and so valuable, and it's great to have a program that in our city and in our borough that really fosters that and helps that mature, helps it develop, and really makes for great art. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of this program, and I'm thrilled to come back every year, and I congratulate you. I congratulate St. Francis. I want to thank St. Francis and Professor Levenberg for being so dedicated, and thank you. With that, I'll see you later.
This piece is entitled A Little Legacy. For most people, prayer is an occasional silent scream to God for help in a crisis. Small wonder that so many prayers appear to go unanswered. There is a science to praying right, and those with long experience have learned to be as persistent as the biblical widow pounding at the unjust judge's door. Additionally, they will often direct prayers to a particular saint with a reputation for wielding power in a narrowly defined area. St. Lucy in cases of poor eyesight, St. Joseph for selling a house, St. Anthony of Padua for finding lost items. My mother prayed daily and much. Storming the heavens was her phrase for a prayer effort of particular ferocity. But to her mind, the intercessor to approach in a wide range of needs was the infant Jesus of Prague. Popular devotion to the infant Jesus dates back to 1628, when the original 28-inch statue, covered with wax, wood, arrived in Czechoslovakia from Spain. It depicts the Christ child at about age 4, wearing a king's crown and dressed in a red cloak over a white lace surplice. The right hand is raised in benediction, and the left holds a globe with a small cross on top. In Catholic homes during my childhood, small replicas of the statue were as common as those of the Blessed Virgin, and it was the custom to write a petition on a small slip of paper and place it under the statue. When a prayer was answered, the petitioner retrieved the slip, not omitting, of course, to recite the prayers or perform any good works that were promised beforehand. My mother, hoping I support for the very best response time, wrote her petitions on tiny strips of paper like those carried in capsules on the legs of carrier pigeons. She then poked the small rolled-up requests into a dime-sized hole at the base of the statue. Sometime after my mother's death, my sister discovered the hiding place inside, and with a paper clip carefully pried out a number of little scrolls. Written in my mother's clear, rounded script, each petition respectfully began, "Dear little infant." As she was the least mercenary of women and always appeared content with whatever pleasures the modest finances of our home allowed, it surprised us to find that one of the petitions expressed a yearning to receive an inheritance. It read, "Dear little infant, please inspire my friend to leave me a little legacy." But where did she expect this windfall would come from? Both of my parents had civil service pensions. They had a small savings account, but no investments that had any prospects of ballooning in value. My mother's parents died within months of each other, and she had been born some years after her older siblings, who were unable to take care of a small child. So she was essentially an orphan and grew up in a home run by an order of nuns. Of the few remaining relations she had when she reached adulthood, not one was rich. Her older sister, who had been a cafeteria cook in a Bronx high school, was long dead. Insofar as anything in the nature of a legacy goes, that is, something handed down from a forebear, she had never received one. Mother's sole rich acquaintance had been her sister's friend, May, a retired cleaning woman who in her own golden years and by a route of succession more tortuous than that of Victoria to the throne of England, May had inherited the entire estate of an eccentric, distant great-aunt she scarcely knew. So this was the friend to be inspired by the infant Jesus of Prague to leave my mother a little legacy. For years, May and her daughter Beatty occupied gingerly the deceased aunt's New Canaan mansion with its huge columned portico. Trusting no servant, the two of them spent their days shampooing fields of oriental rugs, dusting bibelots and paintings in the dark, heavily draperied rooms, and oiling the leather bindings of unread books in the great library with its walk-in fireplace. Once or twice a year, my mother would be invited to spend the night. She invariably reported it to be a strain, as May's conversation consisted solely of complaints about thieving tree pruners, larcenous pond maintenance people, and other predators. Undaunted, whenever she did get invited to New Canaan, my mother would arrive laden with shopping bags full of treats, even though the closets and storage rooms of the great house must already have been bursting with multiples of whatever gift she might have thought to bring. My mother remembered so many birthdays and anniversaries of her wide circle of friends that a sizable item in her budget was the purchase of greeting cards. When it came to May, though, it must be said, she laid it on a bit thick. Not only did she send Valentine's and St. Patrick's Day greetings, cards on Easter, and all major holidays, but she telephoned May, wrote to her regularly, and always wired birthday flowers with a card expressing wishes for continued health and long life. When at last May died, my sister and I were dragooned into going to the funeral. It was a bleak little affair. May had no living relatives excepting Beatty, and knew few people in New Canaan. She had often voiced a yearning to make the acquaintance of Mrs. Ronzoni, of the Pasta Ronzonis, who lived up the lane, but she never realized this hope. My mother, sister, and I, and Beatty were all there was of a ceremonial procession to follow the casket down the aisle, and the only floral arrangements were my mother's and Beatty's. There was no little gathering for refreshments afterwards, and Beatty had to ride in the hearse with the undertaker to a cemetery in the Bronx. We three went to a luncheonette in town and then took the train back to the city. Within months, Beatty sold the mansion and the antiques and moved to Florida. After a full year in the course of which no estate lawyer's letter on thick, cream-colored stationery made its way to my mother's mailbox, it became clear that her friend had not been inspired to leave her a thing. Mother never mentioned the matter, but when she herself died 2 years after May's and 3 years after my father's death, she left an estate of $6,000 to be divided 3 ways. My sister used her inheritance for cosmetic surgery to correct upper eyelids that drooped languidly, like the actress Simone Signoret's. She was pleased with the result. With my money, I bought a 2-way ticket on the QE2 and visited 4 countries in 21 days. It was my first trip to Europe, and it still persists in memory. My dear and altruistic brother used his share to provide boxed lunches for illegal immigrant workers and shelter homeless women in California. So it was we who got the little legacy for which my mother had prayed. And it wasn't so little when you think of it. I just wanted to, a word about our writers group. The novelist Raymond Carver, whenever he was presented with some wretched writing by some of the people in his students, is reported to have said, "It's good you got that behind you." On another occasion, he remarked, "Sometimes you have to drive through some pretty ugly country to get to Parnassus." Now, Parnassus was regarded by the ancient Greeks as a mountain of special meaning to the Muses. Professor Levenberg would, I think, regard even those mild comments as unforgivably cruel, such as is concerned for the tenderness of a budding writer's feelings. Just once, though, I wish I could hear him say, after one of the group reads something slapdash, Lurleen, or William, as the case may be, that is pure dreck. Take it home and do a major rewrite. And don't come back until you do. But he never would. I can't make out what it is he does, but the accepting environment of the classes brings out some wonderful writing from the students. I've been a member for a couple of years, and I truly don't know what I would do without it. For my part, I'd like to see a third bunch of sessions added to the 2 we already have. You can handle it, Mitch, you can handle it.
What's your name? That was Alice Delury, by the way, everybody. Okay, you never told us your name. You're so modest. That was wonderful. Okay, Julia, you're next. So everyone will introduce themselves to save my knees. Thank you.
My name is Julia Payne, and my husband will introduce himself as Peter Pane. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is a very short essay on writing. It was written for an essay contest that could not have more than 300 words. It has 299. But we had to write on books and writing. To an only child living on a ranger station 11 miles from the nearest school, words brought the world. I entered secret gardens, survived a jungle childhood, grew up in large households, and was kidnapped and found treasures. The world was mine. My silent heart could be shared with friends without the fear that my secrets would be broadcast in a schoolyard taunt. I survived reality because my word friends survived far greater difficulties. I planned the attic where my pen would live immortal. I wrote soulful drippings for professors who thought I had promise. I didn't learn that real words are born in labor and nurtured with experience and time. So I put down my pen and went out to play. In the middle of my life, when the real world began to rot, and I was so alone in crowded places, and my trusts were broken, and life became a hole of despair no bigger than myself, those word friends came again. The hole was too black. They showed me one that was blacker. I was desolate and alone. Someone held my hand. I said that life was corrupt. They brought a friend who was uncorrupted. I said that I could never love again, and they taught me the art of loving. And when I was too exhausted to move one step more, they brought the purest escape. I survived and became whole. I didn't write. I taught. I touched hearts, I excited minds, and slowly, when words were needed, I wrote them. A cause needed a spokesman. A class needed a play. A history needed to be recorded. Sentences that lie heavy and dead rise up with just the touch of a word. Emotions enter the heart as well as the head. Arguments sparkle. I'm writing, really writing. And I'd like to read 4 Brooklyn poems. The first one is about the BQE that cut the neighborhood of Williamsburg apart. The overpass. Like a giant squid, the arms of the roadway stretch above the buildings, dividing and choking old neighborhoods. Like a smothering cloud, noxious fumes rain down the thunder of traffic and the lungs of despair. Like a medieval wall, the neighborliness is divided, barring old saints on high platforms who canvass streets made spotless by matronly pride. Like a drought-killed garden, windows lean out on eye-level commuters. Fire escapes on a summer's night touch the traffic heat. And neglected alleyways hold pockets of decay. The second one is called Montague Street. And it was true a few weeks ago. The pear trees are poised in bud, hovering about the opening of spring, shivering in the last frost that caught their cousins unawares. The pear trees show traces of white, a tentative haze of possibility, a pretense of holding back, awaiting the warmth toward May. The pear trees line the city streets, dripping in a soft rain, paused for the chilled wind to pass, bearing the hope of the city in their branches. The third one is called Ontillery Street. And it's about a few months ago, you recognize. In the rain he stands, the cold, icy rain, moving from car to car, offering bears. Plastic-wrapped bears, moving among the traffic. The light changes. Who buys Christmas bears from a man in the rain? And the last one is in my neighborhood. There is a man who walks every day to see his wife in a nursing home. 15 blocks he walks with a cane and shuffling steps in all weathers. And some days she remembers who he is.
My name is Kira Aronson. I have attended Mitch's writing class for several years now. And thanks to Mitch and all my fellow writers, it has given me an enormous amount of pleasure and inspiration. I've written a poem titled Golden Slippers. Golden slippers, nimble feet, dancing all night through, tango, rumba, foxtrot, waltz, ruffled skirt of blue. Many partners, fine young men, bright eyes, caressing arms, twirling me around the floor, music, laughter, dreams. Many years have passed and now I'm cleaning out my closet. In the corner lies a box with ancient dust upon it. I lift the cover and there they are, my golden shoes of yore, still sparkling, very pretty, but they don't fit me anymore. How did my feet grow so large? They used to be much smaller. They used to dance the night away, no pain, exhaustion ever. I must discard these useless shoes, take them to Salvation Army, so a poor young gal can use again my cherished golden slippers. On a notebook of my youth, a teacher wrote a phrase, "Let your carefree feet keep dancing with laughter in your eyes." Forget Salvation Army. I think I'll keep these shoes. In the corner of my closet, they don't take much room. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Camille Bering. We've all thought of death, and as we get older, perhaps this thought becomes more frequent. What we all like to do, I believe, is to conquer the fear of death. And I hope my little story helps you towards this end. The name of my story is the doctor, the dog, and the other side. There comes a time when, as now, the winter skies set upon us. It may feel as if our time here is growing short, just as the fall sunlight hours. Some of us realize there's no castle in the sky, despite what we've wished for. Long years of labor ultimately yield nothing to satisfactorily feed our soul, because the soul can't be nourished by our acquisitions. A disquieting sense of regret may steal coldly into the essence of ourselves, as we wished we'd sustain our spirits with the same earnest seeking for things material. Mary had just received a bad diagnosis from her doctor. She stood up just before leaving and said, "Doctor, I am afraid to die. Tell me what lies beyond death's door on the other side." Very quietly, the doctor replied, "I don't know, Mary. Nobody really does." Mary persisted. "You've been a practicing physician for 60 years. You're a firm believer of your Christian faith. Surely you've got an inkling of what lies beyond us, and you can offer me a word of comfort," she said with trembling lip. The good doctor replied with a sigh, "I'd venture to say, just as we don't know that we're being born, by the same reasoning, we'll not know when we die. There's been much literature in the field of thanatology and out-of-body experiences over the past 50 years, which you can read. Some common factors have been recorded, such as rapidly hurtling through a dark tunnel, accompanied by a swooshing sound, opening into an imaginably brilliant ethereal light, followed by a feeling of profound peace. This has all been documented by pioneers such as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Ray Moody, and their colleagues." As Mary turned to leave the office, the doctor escorted her to the door. He was holding the doorknob when, from the other side, came the sound of soft whimpering and persisting scratching and whining. It was the doctor's dog, Chipper. The doctor opened the door, and Chipper bounded without fear into the room. He leapt upon the doctor with abandon, overwhelmed with gladness as he jumped into the doctor's arms. The panting dog was overflowing with a joy so alive and electric it was palpable to both the doctor and his patient, Mary. Ever so softly but deliberately, the doctor said, "Chipper has never been in this room of the house before. He had no idea what was inside. He knew nothing except that his master was there. I know little of what is beyond the door and on the other side of death, but I do know one thing. My master is there, and that's enough for me." Thank you.
My name is Florence Yukon. I think Mitch wrote a little piece, or someone did, about the age group, and some of us are in our 90s. Okay, I'm 92. Thank you. This is called Glad to Be Home. Another year, the same request. Rosemary needed me, her sister, the nurse. Would I come? The family called Rosemary by her childhood nickname, Mose. 2 vertebrae in Mose's neck had broken, and she absolutely needed help. Her therapeutic equipment was a cage that enclosed her head and neck. The doctor called it a halo. I had taken care of a patient with such a halo before. As nursing, it went routine. Rosemary was free to do as she wished, except that she could not drive. I had to drive Moses' car, a big box car of a Buick. Now that car sized me up, and I was the wrong size. The car did not like short-legged women who pushed the front seat forward. It liked tall, long-legged women, glamorous women. The car was bent on mischief. I could not remember its name. Perhaps that was the trouble. At the grocery store parking lot, it refused to go forward. It turned left and left and left again. We went round and round in circles. At last I got it straightened out and drove it home. When I got to Moses' driveway, it started going round in circles again, always going left. Bing, it complained at my attempts to correct it. Bing, bing, bing. Like a frustrated toddler, it soon refused to move at all, not even in circles. Most called the mechanic to take it away. It was great to be with her, except for her way of telling people what they should do and how. I tried to master the details of my sister's housekeeping and attempted to enjoy her choice of television programs. One morning, Mose caught me making coffee. She pushed me aside and took the coffee pot. "You don't know how I make coffee, do you? I'll show you." She made the coffee cold and weak. I did not want to learn how she made coffee cold and weak. For several days, I drank the coffee cold and weak. At last, I bought instant. At least my coffee was hot. Moses' house was populated by angels, handcrafted angels, beautiful angels, crystal and ceramic angels, ragdoll angels. When I turned on a light, my hand became entangled with the winged ragdoll on the pull chain. Everywhere they fluttered, on the handles to the stove light, on cords from the ceiling, above the bathroom mirror, above the towel racks, doorknobs, and on every flat surface. I was afraid I would knock them down, and not even one little devil. There was a large cloth angel presiding over the microwave. She hung from the ceiling and swung back and forth. I bumped my head on her. On her return trip, she kicked me in the forehead. The angel kicked me almost every time I used the microwave and took me by surprise almost every time. Now, angels fly. They don't kick, as proven by the rest of the heavenly host. They behaved like good little angels. At last the day came when the doctor removed the halo. Soon I would be going home. Every day throughout my visit, friends and neighbors stopped by. One day a neighbor came bringing flowers. She mentioned that she had been saying prayers for Rosemary every day. She recalled her recent trip to Miami. "No, I didn't really enjoy my trip. It was too crowded. Too many Jews living there." "Jews?" I asked. "How did you know? Maybe they were Gentiles." "Oh, it was easy to tell, you know. Their long noses." "Long noses? Maybe that's why they're so smart. They get more oxygen." I was ready to explode. I wanted to ask her if she had taken her measuring tape to Miami, but I refused to embarrass my sister. Nor do I engage in battles of wit with the unarmed. The woman continued, "I almost did explode, idiot." Mose saved the day. She said she was glad the Jews had a place to live after Hitler and the war. When Moses' friend left, I asked her if that woman represented. "Well," she said, To live here, you have to be understanding. You have to tolerate their views. Oh, yes, I'm glad to be home.
My name is Nancy Jones, and I'm in the process of writing a memoir about a trip I took as a student in the Middle East. And I entitled this memoir, To Be Continued, a 1958 tale of misadventure in the Middle East. And I'm going to read just an excerpt. The Middle East seminar is no more, I write home on July 10, 1958. Clifford Dancer has left us all stranded without funds. Clifford Dancer was the ostensible head of the American Abroad Scholarship Fund, the CEO responsible for all the planning and funding of this educational opportunity now in its third year. At someone's request, perhaps a student, perhaps a seminar leader, the State Department investigates him. And a consul reports back to us, Mr. Dancer has no assets. The man is bankrupt. Dancer had not paid either for our hotels in London nor the plane tickets to Cairo. Apparently he spent any money he raised from this year's donors to pay the debts of the previous year. In desperation and hope, we contact American Friends of the Middle East, another fund sponsoring trips to the area. But they give us a definite no on subsidizing the rest of our trip. The American consul in Cairo has a simple directive: Yankees, go home. Undaunted by our finances or the potential dangers, a number of us students decide to continue with the itinerary. After all, the appointments set up along the way with important people and organizations have not been canceled, and Columbia Professor Sam Klausner, the leader of my group, is willing to continue the tour to lead us through Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, and finally Israel. I have exactly $300 left in traveler's checks, enough to cover the $60 bill for the Cairo hotel room and continue the tour. A few other students have enough spending money to continue as well. TWA offers to take us back to New York City for $450 each, an absurdly expensive rate at that time. We students calculate that we can travel around the Middle East and Europe and hop a boat home from Amsterdam for a total of $150. We have not come halfway around the world to turn around and go home. Clifford Dancer, however, keeps the cables flying. He promises to show up in Cairo within 23 hours with funds. He states he has already given money to Sabina Airlines, and when the State Department contacts him by telephone, he sticks to all these fabrications. Sabina Airlines denies receiving any payment for our tickets. The man is lying. He is destitute, a government official tells us again, and urges us to leave this very volatile area. While some of us can afford to carry on with Professor Klausner, other students are destitute as well as devastated and have to borrow money from the government to return home. Professor Peter Paul Janitis, a sociology professor from Bates College, decides to fly home immediately. He leaves his 7 students in group 3 with little choice but to do the same. Professor Janitis is so unnerved by this bad financial news that he develops facial tics and is of very little help to Professor Sam, who becomes the real hero of this disaster. After volunteering to continue with the itinerary, Sam invites students from any of the other groups to join us. When heads are counted, however, we have shrunk from an earlier enthusiastic group of 30 to a determined but wary 10. A couple of the group's leaders think Dancer has probably had a nervous breakdown. The male students don't care. They have no sympathy for him and threaten to either kill or castrate him. The climaxing fiasco comes when 3 male students determine not to be stuck with their Cairo bill. They plan an escape from the hotel via a back exit. Well in advance, they have bribed military guards to give them a helping hand. The military guards are attached to the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, which occupies the first 2 floors of our hotel. After their escape from the hotel, the boys plan to catch a plane to Cyprus. As 2 of the boys are lowering their luggage by rope from a window, the rope breaks. Suitcases fall into the courtyard, and the young student on the ground is suddenly surrounded by officers with machine guns and bayonets. He is accused of being an American spy, and at blade's point is shoved toward a paddy wagon. Screaming in Arabic for the student's release, our multilingual translator, Olivia Maldonado, suddenly appears on the scene and, like a cartoon superhero, actually attempts to pull the machine guns out of the hands of the arresting officers. She is lucky to escape arrest herself, as she is pushed aside and the confused student is taken away in a paddy wagon. Much later, thanks to the pleas of our group leaders and the American consulate, the boy is released and the charges dropped. The incident, in our desperate financial plight, is reported by United Press and Associated Press. I never see the stories, but I write home to my mother not to worry if she sees the newspaper reports. When we finally are ready to fly to Damascus from Cairo, we must leave behind an American souvenir. Bruce Perry, a Bates College student from Dr. Janitas' group, is in the hospital with amoebic dysentery. A nice guy, but completely reckless, Bruce has eaten every bean burger sold in the Cairo streets. I have no doubt that he probably bought water as well. This is sold by a street vendor carrying a large tank and using the same tin drinking cup for anyone and everyone. Bruce's case of dysentery is caused by a dangerous bacteria, and he has already been hospitalized for 10 days. The only comforting news for Bruce was that a few students were remaining in Cairo for several weeks before returning home to the States. We could only hope that they would look after him while there. To be continued, a tale of misadventure. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellie Mandel, and I'd like to take a second to thank the City Council and the Department of Aging for funding this wonderful program at St. Francis College and giving us such an able professor as Mitch Levenberg to lead us. We're all very happy. Who is that? Anyway, this short essay was written after a prompt that Mr. Levenberg gave us about a year or 2 ago. It's called, "When He Opened His Umbrella, She Began to Cry." Growing up after World War II, there seemed to be a lot of superstitions that we didn't hear about now. But I can remember the days when much of what we said and did was guided by these sayings. Don't walk under the open ladder, or a black cat, don't let a black cat cross your path if you don't want to have bad luck. So starts my story about Mary, who grew up during these times and hearing these sayings came to believe in them. She became extremely careful where she walked and what she did. She managed to get through her teenage years without a problem. But when she met and married John, she never let on how superstitious she was. After Mary and John's first baby was born, she quickly put a red ribbon under the baby's pillow to ward off the evil eye. Here are some superstitions she believed in. Break a mirror and get 7 years of bad luck. Drop a fork and a woman will visit. A knife and a man will visit. And a spoon, a child will visit. Clothes worn inside out will bring good luck. Eating fish makes you smart. And warm hands, cold heart. And so it goes. Mary's life was guided by these and other superstitions and never told her husband. So he had no idea of Mary's beliefs. The next day, as John was running late for work, he looked out the window of their house and realized that it was raining very hard. Remembering the last time it rained, the umbrella that he took from the umbrella stand was bent out of shape. So he opened this umbrella to make sure it was in better condition. He was standing in the foyer when he popped the button on it and it opened wide. "Oh, no," cried Mary through her tears. "Why did you do that? Now we'll have only bad luck," she told him. While Mary continued to cry, John closed the umbrella, grabbed his valise, and ran out the door. "Please, not another scene," he said. And as he ran to his car, he tripped, fell in a large puddle, and as he got up, he opened the car door, banging it against his head, climbed in and put the key in the ignition, and the car battery was dead. Was that enough bad luck for him?
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Cesario, and I was the one who was going to be writing something about the class, but it was brought to my attention that age is a factor that upsets some people. But to me, age only enhances your knowledge and your experience. It's like a soup that's stirred, and everything that has happened to you comes out of it. So I changed it a little bit. On a day such as this, you reflect on why you are here. I have been a member of this creative writing class for approximately 4 years. My husband Frank and my son Frankie encouraged me to do what I love. So when the notice came about this class, I thought, why not? Well, when I showed up on the first day, I was nervous because it was a new venture. A little voice in my head said, "Give it a chance, you will see." See, I did, and learned more than I would have ever thought I could. This has been one of the best experiences of my life. Not only did it allow me to do something I love, it also permitted me to meet a varied group of people and enhanced my knowledge of life by their writings, such as stories about World War II, homesteading in America, and also Europe during the Great Depression. Not only did I get knowledge, I gained a great group of prolific friends who are a supportive part of this chapter of my life. Like a well-written book, we are all nurtured and mentored by a great author, our Professor Mitch Levenberg. Today is a showcase of stories that we have written. It is our pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I've written 2 stories. They're kind of short. Hopefully you don't fall asleep. A winner is what I call myself when I wake up each day. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But if you really think about it, we all are. No matter what the struggle, it is actually a win. Because in the struggle, we gain strength of character. The thought is that if we look at the whole picture of our lives, we can reflect on the losing moments and also the winning ones. I take from my losing moments a reflection, not to be repeated, but to be learned from. The winning moments are ones in which memorable events have happened, no matter how big or small. My love of reading was one of those, and it was acquired with age and experience. A respite place was found for me in the Brooklyn Public Library. A quest for information was appeased also by newspapers while growing up, such as the Daily Mirror, the Journal American, the World Telegram and Sun, the Daily News, and the New York Post. Community was the thing I grew up loving, and the sense of it was well written about in the Brooklyn Eagle. It still is one of the best community papers around. All you have to do is look in your local public library. That is definitely a win-win situation. Not only do you get great reading material, but you also acquire information about the greatest borough, Brooklyn. As our borough president says, forget about it. A winner every day with all that Brooklyn offers can be found in the pages of the Brooklyn Eagle. My next thing is something my husband had said I should write. It's called numbers. Numbers are reflected on our calendars and birthdays, anniversaries, major events, such as the Brooklyn Book Festival on Sunday, September 22nd, 2013 at Brooklyn Borough Plaza. One of the sponsors is the Brooklyn Eagle, which was established in 1841. Why did I choose to write about numbers, you might ask? Well, I will tell you this. It happened when someone called me about today's event. They said we had 7 minutes each to give our readings. The song, 7 Little Numbers, triggered in my head, which made me think of numbers and the importance of them in our everyday lives. As we write the dates, numbers on a letter that we mail, it also includes numbers in the address on the envelope of its destination. When we go to the supermarket, we look at numbers or prices on items that we need to purchase. How they add up becomes another bunch of numbers. If you have coupons, it can be a sweet total. Pick 6 lucky numbers for the Powerball and you might become a real winner. Birthdays are also a series of numbers which mark significant events, like the first birthday of a child, number 1, and an 18th birthday, number 18, which becomes a very vital sign of our growing up. As we can now vote and also join the armed forces to protect our country, which also includes your military identification number. When we graduate high school, we usually get a job. Another number is issued, an employee ID number. So numbers become an everyday thing, which we sometimes take for granted. All of this recalling the importance of numbers has made me lose count. Oh, I know. I will end it with this little ditty. 1 + 1 = 2. Now that is all I can do.
My name is Peter Pane, and this is the first session of this class I've ever attended. I'm enjoying it very much, and it allowed me to follow through what my kids have been saying. Dad, you should write this down. Anyway, this is one of the memoirs I wrote concerning my my life as an 18-year-old aboard a battleship during World War II. And this incident was one that stayed with me for years and years and years. It's called Burial at Sea. We didn't know their names. All 3 had been transferred to our battleship, USS New York, each one in dire need of medical attention for grievous wounds suffered in action off the island of Iwo Jima. On the previous day, we had watched from our positions aboard New York as her huge crane, swinging out over the starboard side, hoisted them up from the U.S. destroyer that had delivered them to us. One by one they arrived, their wounded bodies cradled in stretchers, dangling and swaying in the ocean wind during the transfer over open water. Awaiting them at the outer railing of New York's deck were the outstretched arms of corpsmen who received them and quickly rushed them to sick bay. Their own vessel called an LCI, meaning a landing craft infantry, had been hit by enemy fire from the shore and had been sunk. Battleship New York, a veteran of 2 world wars, had been underway nearby, having just taken part in the bombardment of Iwo Jima, the Japanese volcanic island which was subsequently invaded and occupied by U.S. forces. In relation to its size, only 8 square miles, the battle for and the conquest of that island is considered to have been the costliest in American dead and wounded in the entire war in the Pacific. The famous and iconic photo portraying the scene of U.S. Marines planting the American flag atop Iwo Jima's volcanic peak, Mount Suribachi, is very familiar to those of the World War II generation. The scuttlebutt or rumor concerning the 3 wounded now safely aboard was that they had been part of a specialized U.S. Navy unit called UDT, meaning underwater demolition, known as frogmen back then. Today they are called Navy SEALs. Incredibly, after having been brought to a point offshore but within swimming distance, their mission had been to swim to the heavily defended beaches of Iwo Jima for the purpose of searching for and destroying hidden obstacles such as barbed wire and other hazards awaiting the troops who would be storming that beach the following day. Arguably, these 3 men had to have been among the very first of the thousands of casualties suffered by U.S. forces in the conquest of that island from hell, with its black sulfuric beaches of volcanic ash, which on that day acquired a red tinge from the blood of the hundreds of wounded and dying U.S. Marines and sailors attempting to land there. Our good feeling over getting them safely aboard were short-lived. Not one survived his grievous injuries more than 2 days, thus setting in motion preparations for a burial at sea, standard Navy procedure for funeral on the high seas. The ceremony took place on the main deck, was short and simple. Their bodies, each draped with an American flag, neatly arrayed side by side, as if at attention, were positioned on the deck a few feet back from the outer edge. An honor guard of Marines and sailors offered a final salute and tribute. The chaplain said the prayer and conducted last rites. A bugler played taps, and the ship's band followed with the Navy hymn. Then a moment unimaginable but inevitable arrived. With utmost care and solemnity, each of these fallen heroes was carried one at a time back to the same railing over which he had so recently been received. But this time, waiting to receive them was the abyss of the Pacific Ocean, its bottom with each passing day rapidly becoming the graveyard and final resting place for untold thousands on both sides of that war in the Pacific. Being witness to this painful and very sobering event filled us with an overwhelming sense of loss, sorrow, and even remorse. Remorse in the sense that we, who were the last to see their live faces and who would soon witness their final moments, did not know who they were. Yet, in the most sad irony, we did know what the parents and other loved ones of those 3 heroes did not know yet. We knew that they would never again see their sons or husbands or brothers again, and we knew that they could never even visit their graves. That's it.
Hi, I'm Rose Fontanelle, I think, anyway. I want to thank you all for being here and listening to us. And I want to say, please don't leave after the readings, because we are going to unveil a statue of Professor Levenberg. I want to say a few remembrance words for my friend Sybil Kohler. This is Sybil, taken, a good 20 years ago in my apartment. I met Sybil at a gathering of the PWP, which was supposed to be Parents Without Partners, but we found out that it was really People Without a Purpose. So we didn't go back, but we became friends instead. And she was a good friend. Anyway, I forgot my material, which is over there in the bag. Actually, I morphed from comedy. I did comedy for about 10 years just to clear my head when I got fired from what I thought was going to be a job that would support me for days and years. And I did comedy for about 10 years, and then I morphed into storytelling, which is, in a way, much more rewarding. Because in comedy, you're waiting for the laugh, you know, and if it doesn't come, you're dead. But in telling story like this, you want the quiet, because then you know that people are listening to you. So I hope you'll listen. For the main reason I'm here today is to pay tribute to my sisters in the women's movement, of which I was heavily involved for many years, and recalling a day in that movement. March was Women's History Month, so this is in tribute. The story is called Make Me a Marshal. It was really hot this August day. I got through early from my freelance job. I thought maybe I'll spend a cool hour at the museum before heading home. It was just a block away where I'd been working. It was Gerstmann & Myers' design studio. We finished the changes in the serial package. Now we'd wait for the client's approval before sending the art to the printers. I left at lunchtime. I didn't usually dress up for my freelance jobs. Just casual wear, pair of slacks or a skirt with an attractive top. That was my typical work outfit. Today, though, I would wear that new item I picked up at Macy's. It was right in style here in 1970. White polyester mini dress with 2 broad stripes of cloth running down the left side, one yellow and the other stripe orange. On my feet, neat, low-heeled white sandals. It felt good to be dressed up for a change. Wrong page. I walked along Fifth Avenue, too hot to stop for lunch. I'd get a snack later at the museum cafe. As I walked, I became aware of loud noises coming from Upper Fifth Avenue. Sounded like voices and marching feet. And suddenly, there they were. Women, hundreds, no, maybe thousands of women in dungarees, overalls, skirts, carrying banners and chanting, ERA now, free abortion on demand, child care for working mothers, equal opportunity for women. I was certainly aware of the growing women's movement and in complete agreement with the demands and the changes that had to be made. But as yet, I had not gotten involved. In awe, I stood and watched in my white mini dress with the 2 colorful stripes going down the side. I knew I had to be part of that march that was commemorating the 50th anniversary of women finally getting the right to vote in 1920. As they marched past me, I noticed Here and there, women with armbands, designated as marshals, meant to keep the marchers on the path and safe from the hecklers. I recognized some of the women as they marched by. There was Bella Abzug, wearing one of her large, famous hats, and Gloria Steinem, beautiful and stylish, even in dungarees. Then suddenly, there she was, the mother of the women's movement, the grande dame herself, Betty Friedan. Without a single doubt, I ran to her, grabbed her shoulders, stopped her in her tracks. "Betty, Betty," I shouted, "I must march with you. Make me a marshal." I shouted at her, "I must march with you." She looked at me, somewhat astonished, maybe thinking, who was this crazy woman in the white polyester mini dress with the two colored stripes running down one side? But she understood. Betty Friedan called over one of her aides and asked the woman for her armband. Then she gave it to me. Proudly, I slipped onto that right arm, my armband, and I joined the parade as a marshal. It was my rite of passage. The news reports the next day disagreed on the number of marches. The police estimate was 50,000. The Times thought about 20,000. The Post, probably not even there, 7,000. And Pete Hamill put the number at 35,000. No matter. I know that I marched that memorable day of July 26, 1970, as a marshal, in my mini white dress and armband, and I kept right on marching for the next 10 years, for the sake of women. Right on. Thank you.
Lillian Rossi Maeda, and it's an honor to be part of this. Move up. It's an honor to be part of this writing group and an honor to be here with you today. I'll be reading two poems. The first is called The Yellow Flowers, and it's for my mother, Lucia. They emerged from the earth, and what seemed like weeds blossomed into wildflowers, majestic green stalks, capped with yellow petals, an early fall surprise. I had scattered seeds the year before because besides the vegetables and the large hydrangea, the yard looked forlorn, in need of something, bereft. Or maybe I was mourning what was and what would be. And there they were. So tall they seemed to sway, almost reverential, bowing to the wind. Their grace and beauty a wonder. In Norwegian, the word for miracle is wonder. I wheeled you to the window and saw you smile. Coreopsis, you said, naming them. And I filled your vases. Each room took on a new look, as if dressed in light. But it was the garden that still inspired awe. Coreopsis, you whispered again, as if the word held some other meaning. But what it was, you could not even venture to say. And I thought of Core, more often Persephone, and how she welcomed the dead, and how Ops, Saturn's wife, was worshipped for fertility of the earth. But still, it was only the yellow flowers in their splendor, swaying in the wind, asking you to dance. This reading today is dedicated to Sybil Kohler, who graced our community of writers at St. Francis. It was always a treat when Sybil shared new or revised writing. She was a wonderful published writer and an insightful listener, because she thought deeply about writing. 2 years ago, I went to a reading that she and Mitch Levenberg, who facilitates this class so brilliantly, gave at the Brooklyn Heights Library. It was an extraordinary experience because they worked so well together. I have a fond personal memory of Sybil outside of the writing group. Both Sybil and I were at a UFT get-together to celebrate the end of classes for retired teachers. Sybil was in an advanced French class as part of the entertainment, and her group donned striped shirts, black pants, red neck scarves, and French berets, and they serenaded the group in French. There was such a joie de vivre about her. It was with that memory that I sat down at the computer to write a poem about her. But what followed was something different. Of course, that's the way writing sometimes works. Sybil certainly would have understood. Water Speaking to Stone, for Sybil Kohler. I have taken the title of your book because it speaks to me of writing, and even reading, and how in doing them, we enter a place we do not fully know, and how the journey there is often clouded, since memory is both water and stone. The stones are what we carry, the water is what sustains us. Your words are like water, Sybil, pure and fluid, and the landscape you traverse, although your own, catches other shadows, the way the everyday, the commonplace, is universal. The ache of loss and love, the family, the ephemera of objects and paintings, all glistening, and the space, the edges you leave, what is often not said is as important as what is. And the sounds of your dreams, wandering cows, fiery dragons, the metaphors among the precision of your words, cut and polished, jewel stones, even the pauses deliberate, deft, the writer's process and final art. The ancient Sibyls were oft unheeded, for truth is painful, but they were undeterred. They wrote their secrets on leaves. Some leaves were read by wanderers, others passed into the wind. For all things are fleeting, but they wrote their words because of need. And wind, like water, speaks to stone. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say that, could we have a round of applause for all the readers today? They were just so, it was just so great. Once again, can't wait to get home and start writing. Seriously, I already missed their voices. It's been over, 10 seconds and I missed them, but I'm lucky because I'm going to get to hear them again on Sunday. That's a blessing for me. I thought I would, if you'd indulge me, I thought I would kind of end today's reading by kind of coming full circle, and something I had written, a short piece about coffee, which Ellen had started with and Florence had talked about. It was inspired by a recent visit to Florida to visit my mother, who she'd kill me if I told you her age, unlike Florence, who doesn't mind, but she's 91, my mother. So it's called The Power of Cuban Coffee. I see my mother everywhere. The food court is full of my mother, not in a bad way, but in a full way. She is waiting online to buy us knishes. She is talking to a man who looks like my father, with her chin raised just a little so she can look younger. She is 90, but she knows she can pass for 75. She has at least a quarter of a century fewer wrinkles than someone else her own age. Now she sits outside the luggage discount store at the flea market, dreaming of moving out of her house. A man sits at the same bench, his stomach out, his legs spread. He snores. I am thinking he too snores who only sits and waits. When I return from my walk around the market stalls, my mother tells me to sit down. I tell her I don't want to sit down. She tells me I'm tired and I should sit. I think she's the one who's tired and wants to keep sitting. So I squeeze in between her and the snoring guy. I look over at the piano that plays itself. I think about how bad the economy is down here, that they can't afford to hire a piano player and have to teach pianos to play themselves. Why would anyone want to go listen to a piano playing itself? Would anyone want to see an orchestra playing without musicians? A pair of shoes dancing without a dancer? A pair of polyester pants and a white belt without a man snoring in them? I'm not certain why the men's room at the food court has the loudest, most powerful hand blower I've ever seen or heard. Is it really necessary? Perhaps it would be more appropriate at the airport, since it sounds a lot like a plane right before takeoff. I am thinking it was designed by a canasta group of elderly Jewish women who were sick and tired of their husbands leaving the men's room with wet hands. It just reminds me of the lack of subtlety anywhere around here. I think of this food court not so much as a place to eat, but as a place to put enormous amounts of food inside of me and wait for the results later. Although knishes, as far back as I can remember, were always sidekicks, now they seem to be the main characters. They have shoved everything they can into them here, even hot dogs. There are hot dogs now sticking out of knishes. Hot dog has now become an adjective phrase to describe a particular kind of knish. Can there possibly be a department anywhere in the world with the word health in it that should have let this happen? I really tried to hide my daughter's eyes when we get to the display case. No matter how you slice it, it is not a wholesome sight. All that being said, whoever thought of it in the first place is a sick, evil genius. Next to the Knish place is the First Avenue Deli, since the name Second Avenue Deli is already taken. I suppose they figured, what's one avenue? You can't fool people, though. Almost no one is buying anything there, except me. I buy a hot dog. It's not until I get my Cuban coffee, when the meaning of the universe opens up to me, that I suddenly realize that there is no deli on Second Avenue. But that's okay. I am in a strangely forgiving mood. It is the power of Cuban coffee. It begins slowly, and then suddenly I want to forgive the world for all its transgressions. I look around and notice people are happy. Even the old people are happy. They eat things like knishes and pizza, like they're kids again. They laugh with their grandchildren. Sellers from different stalls are talking to each other. The world has become one big flea market. I could shop all day, buy things like little hats and toolkits and gold-sequined iPhone cases and bundled socks and reading glasses and all those gadgets they sell at 3 in the morning on TV, which makes so much more sense to me now. And I even feel sorry for the poor guy who sells that liquid soap that cleans glasses, where I have never seen anyone stop. And I almost buy a bottle, except they haven't invented coffee, Cuban or otherwise, that powerful yet. I hear that piano that plays itself again and look at it and listen to it with wonder, imagining a world one day when we will not have to lift a finger ever again, when everything will be done for us and we won't even need piano players to play pianos or saxophonists to play the sax. And we can shop for things big and small and shove things into our mouths, foods we have known shoved inside other foods we have never known, and listen to music we have never heard, and hear books read aloud from somewhere in the sky while we are awake or dreaming. And as we leave the food court, I see the man in the polyester pants still snoring on the bench, and I envy him, for I see he already has reached his own blessed ignorant happiness, to sleep guiltlessly while making bodily noises among an indifferent public while his wife shops, much to his unconscious pleasure, alone. Later that evening, back at my mother's house, stomach acid begins to move slowly, yet sinuously into my throat. My mother bemoans her fate, her age, her loneliness, here in this apartment, alone now. My father, her friends and family, all gone. She can't find the bottle of pills she bought that morning at the pharmacy. My eyes are no good anymore, she says. That night, unable to sleep, I notice it too. At first, I'm not sure what it is, and then I know. It is the silence. It is a silence I have never heard before. No wind in the trees, no voices across the lake, no cicadas or crickets hiding in the dark. Even the phone doesn't ring, nothing. Now there is only the memory of sound, of years ago or even this afternoon, of pianos playing, of fat men snoring, of hand dryers blowing, of the elderly eating knishes and pizza with their grandchildren. For alas, the power of the Cuban coffee has vanished. Thank you. It's my mother. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, and another year has gone, and for our great reading, and everyone was so wonderful. Thanks. We have refreshments outside to refresh yourselves. Something. Why are they called refreshments? I don't have to write about that. So anyway, thank you again, and wait, have I left anyone out? Thanks for President Dugan, too. He couldn't make it today, but he sends his regards, and I'll send them some coffee, Cuban coffee, I think. Thank you. Thank you very much.